Hi, I'm Boris Blade, and I'm the host of Strange But Harmless. So here are a couple of related stories from two totally different times of my life. My first seance. My first seance was a little weird, like any seance story isn't. Well, first, a little background on one of the props that I used. I know, too much information, but this is pertinent to the story. My mom was from the mountains of Virginia. We used to visit her mother's farm for 2 weeks each year. That was our family vacation. Our dad would pack us all in the car around 1 a.m. after putting us to bed about 10 p.m. the night before. That way we'd sleep for at least the first third of the trip. Prior to 77 South being finished, we had to go through Kentucky. Well, the last year we went that route, we stopped by a Virginia state park on our way home to eat our packed lunches. While there, us kids were told to go burn off some energy. Well, this park happened to be constructed around a Civil War cemetery, and some of the headstones had fallen over the years from weather, kids playing, and so forth. Well, when we packed up our stuff and headed home, my older brother, 3 years my senior, insisted on riding in the very back by himself. That was odd. No one liked riding back there. There were no seats and you had to lay down. I chuckled knowingly to myself. He was probably around 11 or 12 at the time. When he got home and Dad started unloading the car, he saw the gravestone and knew right away what it was. He asked us kids who put it in there. My brother, who was the culprit, claimed the deed. He said it was lying next to the gravestones in the path. He said he didn't think it was from the cemetery. Little did he know, I had witnessed him testing stones, grabbing them and trying to move them. I didn't know what he was doing, and just when I was about to go ask, he found one that was quite loose. I watched as he tried to pull it up. It was stubborn and wouldn't pull out. I was dumbfounded when he started wiggling the thing. After about 2 minutes of him rocking it back and forth, all the while looking around for looky-loos, it came out. I laughed as he pulled on it so hard that when it came loose, it threw him backwards right on his ass. I thought, serves him right. He sheepishly got up, took one more good look around, and collected his prize. I watched as he lugged it to the car and hid it in the very back of our Ford Torino station wagon. My dad let him off the hook with a stern warning and a promise that next year we would visit the park again, and he, my brother, would put it back. My brother took it, used a piece of rope and tied it to the headboard of his bed so he could sleep under it at night. I once saw him lying there in the dead-in-the-coffin pose, on his back, laying stiff as if standing at attention, the military stance, arms crossed. He did kind of resemble a fresh corpse. I say fresh due to his skin tone being normal and all. Oh, you thought I was the only strange one in the family? Well, just because they didn't, at the risk of making an ass of myself, I assumed, see weird shit at night, doesn't mean they grew up normal. They were still raised by the same religious fanatic as I, and taught the same thing as I. We must be above the world, not of the world. That was one of Dad's mantra-type sayings and was one of his rules for being a Christian. Of course, they finished 77 South that year, and we never did make it back to Jenny Wiley State Park. My dad made sure to tell us kids, don't let anyone know what it is or where it came from. Let's fast forward a few years. I'm now around 13 or 14. It's after dark, around 8 p.m., and I'm still outside because a friend, the neighbor boy, and I were camping out on a quilt in the backyard. His little sister snuck out of the house and was hanging around with us, as well as a couple of the other neighborhood girls. Most of them were a few years younger than us. They wanted to try that stiff as a board, light as a feather thing, where someone lays down and everyone sits around them. You all take each hand and stick 2 fingers under the body, chant something stupid, and you're supposed to lift the person up. Of course, it never worked. I had sat in on a few of these over the years. I'm sure a lot of you did too. I remember one time I was sitting there and I actually started to levitate. I shut it down before I got too high. Not that kind of high. This was my pre-party years, for anyone to notice. No, I'm just kidding. That didn't happen. The girls decided we should have a seance. I suggested we do it on my front porch. Well, I knew just the prop we needed to make it scary. I went down to my brother's bed, untied the ropes, and brought the gravestone outside for the seance. Well, while I was getting the gravestone from the basement, someone else had gone and got a candle on a small candle holder with a little handle, like the ones in the old movies. I laid the gravestone in the middle of the porch right in front of the front door, and we put the lit candle on top of it. And we sat looking at each other like the idiots that we were. Well, my friend's little sister looked at me and asked, what do we do now? I figured someone better take charge. I told them to take each other's hands and make a circle. I said, whatever you do, don't break the circle if I make contact. I was just saying what I'd heard on TV and improvising a tad. I told everyone to close their eyes, take deep, slow breaths. After a minute or so, it seemed all of our breathing was in sync. I started talking. I can't for the life of me remember what I said. I seemed to blank out. Not black out, because I was still awake and talking. After a couple of minutes, I came back to myself. I heard myself saying, "If you are here, send us a sign. Show us a sign." I kept repeating that phrase. After the fourth time, one of the girls screamed and tried to break the circle. We all opened our eyes and the candle was extinguished. There was a thin wisp of smoke drifting up from it. I turned and looked at the door, and the reflection of the candle in the glass, it was still burning. All the girls ran screaming into the night. I guess they all ran home. I looked at the candle reflection again, and it was no longer lit, just like the real candle. I packed up the gravestone, took it back in the basement, threw it on the bed, and went back outside to hang out with my friend. As with most of the weird stuff that happened as a kid, I don't remember anyone ever talking about it after that night. That could just be my memory, but I can remember the incident in detail. Well, that's the story of my first seance. Here's one about my last. Well, there was this girl I liked. She was a good friend of my little sister's. She was 5 years my junior. A good friend of mine and I both had crushes on her. She played us off each other, but not in a malicious way. That lasted for a few months, from the end of summer through the holidays. Then we kind of drifted apart, her and my group of friends, that is. A while after that, that same friend passed away in a boating accident. It was hard on me. We had only been friends for a short time, and we were just becoming good friends. It had been maybe a year or so since I'd seen the girl. She called me out of the blue and asked if I wanted to hang out. That first time I saw her after so long made my heart skip a beat. We talked about life in general, just catching up. Then the topic turned to our mutual friend, yeah, the dead one. We ended up sitting on the floor facing each other, holding hands and talking about him and how he died. I was there when it happened and explained everything to her. Well, everything I felt comfortable saying to anyone. You see, there were extenuating circumstances surrounding the accident that only one other person and I knew about. And he's dead too now, so I won't besmirch his name with the details. Well, that night started another round of me hanging out and partying with her and her new friends. We partied hard for a couple of months. I would buy a half-gallon of Seagrams and a 2-liter bottle of 7-Up, and we'd make 7 and 7s for a couple of days, chasing it with beer, of course. For some reason, her friends pretty much left us alone in the evenings after her kids went to bed, so we partied alone a lot that year. I was staying at her place till 2 or 3 a.m. and going to work by 7. After a while of that, I started sleeping on her couch half the time. I also kept my work uniforms in my car each week so I'd have them handy no matter where I was. Just because I was never a Boy Scout didn't mean I couldn't be prepared. Did I ever tell you I was once a Weebelo? Only for a short time, though. They kicked me out for eating brownies. Nah. I would only go home to grab stuff I needed and switch my dirty street clothes for clean ones, and a quick meal once in a while. After a few months, she met a young man. He was a drifter living in an abandoned motel down the road. I knew when I first met him that he was bad news. I have this ability to sense these things. It's one of my superpowers, and it served me well over the years. I knew to trust it. I tried warning my friend off passive-aggressively to no avail. She treated him like a novelty toy. Could I possibly have been a little jealous? No, I was a whole lot jealous. But that had nothing to do with this. I thought I loved the girl, and I would have done almost anything for her. This kid let it be known early that he had intentions towards her, even though she was 6 or 7 years older than him, and had told him he was too young for her. But she did eat up the attention. I mean, who wouldn't? A younger member of the opposite sex flirting heavily, hanging on your every word. And this guy was seriously bad news. Over the couple of weeks he was around, rumors had spread about him, and most of them were started from his boastful stories. Turned out he was supposedly wanted for murder in another state, and that's why he came here. He was 17 years old, claiming to be 20. There was a lot more shit going around than that, but I didn't need to hear all of it. I already knew he was bad news, like I said before. One Saturday night we were partying hard. All of her friends were there. We had her apartment and her neighbor's doors on both sides open. It was pretty much party wherever you wanted. At some point the topic of conversation turned to occult talk. It started off light, but then the kid quickly took it to a more serious place. He started talking about Ouija boards and demon possessions and the sort, not jokingly, but for real. I had played with Ouija boards before and knew they could be dangerous, if not only to your soul. My first experience with one was at school in the first grade at recess on a rainy day. It was one of the board games kept under the cabinets for just such a day. But those details are for another episode. When he started talking about how easy it would be to summon a demon, I tried to shut it down. I told my story about my first seance, only a cutesy version that was more humorous than I normally tell. It did change the subject, but then the idiot said, "Let's have a seance now." Everyone agreed, everyone but me. When the kid said he'd run it, my friend looked at me with a funny look on her face and said, "Boris, you do it." She knew of my ability to read people. She had counted on it herself in the past. And I hadn't told her about my first impression of this guy, but she could tell I didn't trust him. I didn't want to risk pissing her off after all. Like I said, he was a novelty to her. So I agreed to run the thing. I did all the expected things, made everyone hold hands, warned about breaking the bond if we were successful at raising a spirit. You know, I was giving them a show. Everyone was talking and giggling. And then my hand slapped the table and I shouted loudly, "Silence!" I went into a routine about the room must be cleansed of all negativity. All negative thoughts must be banished for this to work. I played it up big. Then, when all was quiet, I bowed my head, closed my eyes, and acted like I was in deep concentration. In all actuality, I was praying, something to this effect: "God, please don't let him lead her down this path. Show her something so scary she'll never want to play with this again." A minute later, my friend gasped. She threw me a look I still to this day can't describe it. A mixture of anger, fear, loss, sorrow, all rolled into one devastated look. And the emotion rolling off her in waves was so strong it kind of scared me a little. Did I mention I'm a strong empath? Then she said as tears ran down her face, "How dare you show me that? How could you show me his face like that?" Well, as you can imagine, her saying that and walking out of the room kind of put a damper on the party. It wasn't but a few minutes later that people started wandering out. Most didn't go home, they just migrated to one of the other two apartments. When my friend came out of her room an hour later, she looked at me and said, "Oh, you're still here?" I said that I could leave if she wanted, and she said no, it was okay, but she didn't feel like drinking anymore. I spent the rest of that night putting out the proverbial fire. I gave her a few minutes, then said, "Listen, I don't know for sure who you thought you saw," at which point she shot me her version of that look. That may well have been the very first time I ever got that look from anyone other than my mother. Well, maybe a church lady or two growing up. Then I told her, I can't control what people see. I don't even know if it was me. Again, with the look. After that, we mostly sat in silence, except for the stereo. We never talked about it after that night. I found out later from a friend she confided in that she had seen a face in the picture on the wall. It was a landscape picture. She never told anyone who she saw, as far as I know, but I know who it was. There was only one person who could have evoked that much emotion and anger from my good friend. Shortly after that, the kid got picked up for vagrancy. It seems someone dropped a dime on him. We heard that he was extradited back to where he came from. We didn't ever hear what he was really wanted for. Then another guy came into her life and she ended up marrying him. She insisted I come to the wedding for moral support. I did, but didn't conduct myself in the best light. I didn't do anything to mess up the ceremony, but the reception, that's a different story. For later. Well, I'm Boris Blade, and as always, I'm strange but harmless.